The US is bracing for the biggest test for American democracy. Can he make a comeback, and can he trump 81-year-old Joe Biden, who is fighting his toughest battle and perhaps his last political campaign? But there's much more at stake. Immigration, gun laws, far-right extremism versus liberal politics, democracy, and the great American dream itself. Well, Trump has vowed retribution on his political opponents and said immigrants pollute American blood. Well, these elections also come amid two raging wars in Ukraine and in Gaza, making the government in the US even more critical for the global order. And well, Professor Scott Lucas is with us. He is Professor Emeritus at University of Birmingham. He watches the US very, very closely. Thanks, Mr. Scott, for joining us on India Global this week. How important are these elections for global economy? Not just the UK, but elections in the US, elections in the European Union. How important are these elections in terms of their timing? Well, these polls come amid a global economic slowdown.
Well, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that these are the most important elections in some of these countries, not just for decades, but indeed going back to the 19th century. I think it's the most important election in the United States since 1865, the most important election in the UK since 1945. And of course, it's a very important year for India in terms of its ongoing developing place within Asia. We're talking about continuing to deal with the economic and social issues after COVID. But having said these global issues are important, I think it's always important to go local. So for example, when we talk about the United States, it's very important to say that this is really an issue of whether the United States system can withstand the efforts by a certain group, and especially by Donald Trump, to tear down that system. Only 3 years. In fact, it's the third anniversary of his attempted coup in 2021. I think in the United Kingdom, the economic damage of Brexit, the unprecedented economic damage of Brexit, and the likelihood that the UK cannot recover from it makes this a special election. And if you talk about India, the question not only of India's aspirations, its economic, its technological aspirations, but the issues of whether communities, different communities, religious and ethnic communities in India, whether all of them have space, have tolerance. I think those are important issues there.
Absolutely. And speaking of the timing, Mr. Lucas, these elections also come amid two raging wars. Of course, the world seems to have lost interest in the Ukraine-Russia war, but that is also very much, ongoing. So how important are these elections in that context? Because the leadership and the governments will have to take critical decisions vis-a-vis their foreign policy at a time of war.
Let's talk about the United States, for example. When we talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, probably the biggest threat to European stability since 1945. It is no secret that Russia has interfered in U.S. elections to try to get Donald Trump elected or to support his election. They did so in 2016, and they will do so in 2024, because it is no secret that Donald Trump blackmailed Ukraine in 2019 by freezing military aid unless they dish dirt on his opponent, Joe Biden. It's no secret that Donald Trump would like to bring the United States out of NATO. So Donald Trump is effectively Russia's candidate in that election. It is no secret that when you talk about European elections, that Russia will try to interfere in those elections as well, because they will want to see candidates who are against aid to Ukraine, candidates like Viktor Orban in Hungary, to see them triumph. And then you have the added issue of Israel and Palestine, and specifically Israel and Gaza. And that is, of course, from country to country, what that has done is that it's mobilized people, I think, to really, sort of say, look, is it the case that we should always have a default position of supporting one side or the other? That our candidates should always be pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian? And I think those questions will loom large, but they will differ. The way they play out will be different, including in India, because of the local context.
Absolutely. Mr. Lucas, thanks very much for joining us on India Global this week.